Uno, dos, tres.
Yes. Hey, welcome everybody. And you already heard James. This is going to be a great time. Here it is Friday. James, are you ready for this?
I don't know, bro. Every time you ask me that question, you tell me something that's going to make me mad.
Okay, well, that's... Okay, here, I got a few things. I'm going to ask you about this high-ranking Muslim delegation that went to Israel. We don't know who it was yet. I want to ask you about that in a minute. But I want to open up with this. A couple of articles, and these are really anti-Christian. It's this anti-Christian policy stuff that's coming our way. Is it time to save the United States by breaking it up? And we've heard that Texas is saying, hey, we're going to secede. We're hearing that rhetoric. But listen to this. In a since-deleted tweet, lefty writer Amy Siskin, this is from the PJ Media, cheekily suggested that the American blue states will join forces with Canada, while the rest of us red state welfare cases will get shoved off into Jesus land. That is a shot. The welfare cases in Jesus land, they're calling us if you lean conservative. You look at how you just get, they do this branding, but there's more. You got to hear this one. Ready? This is Chris Como. Think, good old Chris. Get in the closet. Serious Christians, your kind aren't welcome in public life. So I'm reading this, it's about CNN's Chris Como, and essentially what he is saying is, listen, go to church on Sunday, but shut up the rest of the time. We don't want to hear about your Christianity. Just do your hour on Sunday, and that's it. So we're watching this rhetoric, this anti-Christian rhetoric, and thinking, man, James, what do you have to say about this kind of stuff?
I don't know where to start. This is absolutely crazy. The unmitigated arrogance of somebody like Cuomo. Give me a break. What kind of nerve does a human being like that actually have? The one thing that he has in common with anybody of power is his father, the devil. And that's really the reality of it. These people that continue to put down Christians for the very things that they stand for, when in reality, it is the intervention of the Lord in the life and the conception and the inception of this nation that gives horrible human beings like him the freedom to be able to speak as freely as he actually does. He has no clue what he is talking about. He's of his father, the devil, and people like them continue to do the things that they do simply because they think it provides for them. They believe that it provides for them some kind of value and some kind of worth. I think it's important. We really, truly ought to consider, and every single person should memorize these words. Every single person. It is so incredibly important, right? Memorize these words. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station in which the laws of nature and nature's God entitles them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Where do we get that from? It's the very document that founded this nation. When are we going to get our act together? When are we going to recognize that it is God that has embedded within the heart of man his law? Literally, his law. He's the one that has put the understanding of what is moral and immoral within the heart of man. And when man chooses to take his law and completely ignore it, you get things like BLM. You get things like Chris Cuomo. You get things like his brother. You get the kind of nonsense where people say, take your Bible-believing garbage and get out of here, when it is indeed those very words that were declared on July the 4th, 1776, that actually brought him the right to be able to do the things that he does. Why? Because remember, to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitles them. Nature's God. What is he thinking? What are these people thinking? The word of God is the very thing that inspired the very place that he's asking us to get lost from. It's the word of God that brought these people to the place, literally drove them to the very place that provides for them, that affords for them the very freedoms that they have to rip us off, to tell us to get lost. Maybe we ought to stick them right in the face of somebody like King George III. Maybe we ought to just stick them back to a place like that. Get out of this country and stop making this nation a place that you think it wants to be. This nation is what it is. My God in heaven, may you keep it from never changing from that which our forefathers intended for it to be. Truth be told, the problem with Christianity and the problem with Christians, of which I am, is that we are not taking a stand to evil, wicked, demonic, tyrannical fools like this person who was of his father, Satan himself.
Yeah. You know, James, that was fantastic. One of the reasons why I love having you on here is because you're able to articulate these things so well. Pretty much all of these questions that I ask you, and I look at this, and the reality of it is we have a country that has become anti-God, and the problem right now in this country is those who speak of the Bible, those who are preaching the Bible. And this is one of the reasons why I believe the church has been silenced in America. And when I say the church, I mean the fake church. You know, they haven't been teaching the Bible in a long time. And so it was real easy for churches in general to be shut down. Although obviously there's some of us that are still open, but I look and go, this is the world that we live in. I wonder how many pastors actually believed the Bible that they had been claiming that they believed, and hence it's really no surprise to have that kind of talk come from anybody over at CNN.
It drives me crazy that, you know, the very next words, and this is the part that just, it drives me insane. The very next words that follow that initial declaration, that initial statement is, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that what? All men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By the way, among them, not all of them, not all inclusive of them, among them. He goes on to say, in this very word, in this very beautiful set of documents, he said that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, we are the consenters. We are the ones that provide rule in this nation. Those that choose to be part of the ruling class, they govern by our consent. And the arrogance and the foolishness and the ridiculousness of people who will go on thinking that they can rewrite the very words of our founding father to create and establish a declaration that is outside of that which God has intended is absolutely insane. It's arrogant. And we as Christians, I'm telling you, bro, we as Christians need to take a stand right now. We need to engage in prayer. We need to ask for the Lord to completely destroy the strongholds of the enemy that continues to inspire demonically inspired individuals like these. And we also need to be bold, and we need to be outspoken. Now, I'm not asking for everybody to be like me and get all crazy and all aggressive like I tend to do every now and again, but we definitely need to start being bold, if not bolder, and aggressive, if not more aggressive than those who are coming against and attacking that of our nation. We don't understand the greatest war that we are fighting right now in this nation is the one of a conjured up idealism, and it's bought and paid for by the Chinese. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's ridiculous and inspired by Satan himself. We need to take a stand about those issues. Yeah. This is getting ridiculous.
Yeah, and the left is also winning the side of they own the argument, so to speak. They own the narrative. They've branded everybody on the right. So they say welfare recipients in Jesus land. So they've automatically labeled, you're the burden on society. You are the problem. Not only are you the burden on society, you also are the ones who are always preaching this Jesus stuff that we all know is just a fairy tale. And that's how they're labeling it. And then they've got the control of the mainstream media, and they're just going for it. And you can tell which direction that all of this is going. But the problem that Satan has is the Bible-believing Christian, because we stand in his way. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom, you could not be more accurate in what you're saying. This is getting to the point right now where it's so ridiculous and it's so out of hand that there is nobody to blame for this nonsense. And forgive me for saying this, nobody to blame for this nonsense except the believers who continue to allow it to happen.
Yep.
Shame on Christians for allowing it to continue, for continuing to allow it to happen.
Yep.
The problem is we as believers have not at all, not for 1 second, dedicated enough fortitude, enough of a gut to fight back and engage in this war the way that we're called to do so. Mm-hmm. And it's getting out of hand. It's ridiculous. And we are going to lose the republic if we continue to allow this to happen.
We are, and it's not a pretty sight. I just posted this, James. You might have seen it. I just posted it the other day. If you on Instagram, if you allow the government to break the law during an emergency, they will create emergencies to break the law. And right now, we've allowed this to happen.
What an incredible statement! Yeah, I want that. That's an incredible statement. Say that again, Tom, please.
If you allow the government to break the law during an emergency, they will create emergencies to break the law.
I am begging you to text that to me. That is an incredible statement.
You can find it on my Instagram, but I'll send it to you too. So
I love it.
Yeah. So I look at this whole thing and think this is what has happened here in America. And I'm convinced if Christians had just stood up against this from the beginning, we wouldn't be in this swamp that we are in. It's terrible to watch what's happening. Listen, we got to move on because I don't got a lot of time left. I wanted to talk to you about, it was a Zero Hedge article with this anti-Trump cocktail. I love what he put together. He said, listen, and we don't have enough time to get into this today. Maybe for just 1 minute you can. He says, listen, BLM and environmentalists in these different groups that are all anti-Trump groups that have all lined up to vote for Joe Biden. He said these groups do not get along. They all hate each other. What on earth makes anybody that's environmentalists think that they're going to be able to get along with BLM people that just want to kill people like environmentalists? And then he even points out environmentalists, pretty much all of them are anti-vaxxers also. So you look at this and he lists all these different groups that are on that side. They're not going to get along. And then he just points out the obvious, look, this thing is just going to end in disaster. And it's kind of you look at it and you go, man, what a mess this is going to become as we proceed forward.
Oh, yeah. Listen, the reason why none of them are going to get along is because none of them have anything that they're reasonably standing for, right? Even what they call idealism or whatever idealism they actually tend to possess within their minds or their hearts, all that is a mechanism to drive a much bigger picture that is actually being driven by a much more organized course. Black Lives Matter, for example, is something that is driven by a much larger picture than they are. They are just a bunch of and you've already said it, right? We've already said it. They're trained Marxists. They're a bunch of suckers that are being bought and paid for by one of the largest communist organizations in the world, and that's the Chinese Communist Party. We know that. That's always been the case. It's never not been the case. They've been funded by it. It's not a surprise that they started during the era of Obama. Obama, of course, being one of the most friendly people to the Chinese Communist Party, very close with them through, of course, the relationship established by Joe Biden, being the fact that he was the one that established all of the economic policy and all of the global policy that exists with China during the tenure of his time as vice president. As a matter of fact, it was Joe Biden that went out and represented the administration during that time because he was being bought and paid for by them. And shame on William Barr for not speaking up over the fact. And I think he's full-blown deep state. Forget that guy. He's full-blown own deep state. He was irresponsible. Heck, forget irresponsible, completely immoral for not saying that there was a major investigation that went on into the compromising actions and behavior of not only his son, but also his father. What a wicked, dark human being that would do something like that. And I don't know if you're just as complicit if you would cover something like that up. I don't care what you're doing. Yeah. I don't care if it's in the name of sparing or protecting a U.S. election. Are you kidding me? There's not a single person in the DOJ that would not leak one of those documents had there been a document related or a subpoena related to something going on with one of the Trump kids.
Yeah, no
You mean
kidding.
to tell me that I can go after Barron? You mean to tell me that I can walk around with a floating head hanging out and everybody will clap for it and say it's okay? You mean to tell me that I can make fun of the president's wife and make fun of his children, make fun of his daughters and all that, and none of them are complicit in anything immoral or wicked or evil? And yet, when you have a guy who's being paid and bought for by the Chinese Communist Party to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, who's being righteously investigated for it, and the big guy gets his office keys, gets money put into his bank and everything else, and we're saying it's not a big deal, and the media still to this point, completely still to this point, give me a break.
Yeah, this is not going to age well. And then we have Hunter Biden. From what I've understand, is that there's videos of him having sex with underage girls in China. And you look at this. Could you imagine if anything, just half as bad, was on the side of the conservative? What the media would have done, but they're covering all of it up. It's not just the media. It's like you said, pretty much everybody is complicit in all these different branches of the government. Listen, James, this stuff is pretty disgusting, and we need to stand up for what is right. But I've got to move on because we're almost out of time. Let me read this to you, and I'm going to have you comment, and then we'll wrap up. Here it is. This is coming out of Israel. What was high-ranking Muslim delegation doing in Israel? A senior advisor to the leader of a large Muslim-majority country headed a delegation that met with Israeli representatives in Tel Aviv. Despite the two countries having no diplomatic relations, Israel today has learned. Israel Hayom, a senior advisor to the leader of a large Muslim-majority country, has recently visited Israel. Although under censorship restrictions, Israel Hayom cannot name the country or the people involved due to potential national security and diplomatic sensitivities. We can report that the advisor headed a delegation of senior officials for meetings in Tel Aviv 2 weeks ago. And so we look at this, all these different nations that are lining up with Israel because of the Abrahamic Accords. Who do you think this is? They can't even mention this. 2 weeks later, They still can't even mention the country.
Okay, so it's going to be a few. The long shot of who it could be, and this would be just like a total long shot, is it could be potentially Libya. And the reason why they won't mention it for national security reasons is because of the literal civil war that they're in the middle of and the fighting that's going on right now that involves Russia for a section of them. It could be Yemen. It could be Oman. It could be Iraq, but very likely, more likely than anything else, this is just my thought, the first nation that comes to my mind, Saudi Arabia. And the reason why I say that is because there's too many subtleties that the news media has already reported on that would give me an indication that this is probably something linked to the royal family. And perhaps the greatest of those things is the fact that if you remember, Netanyahu gets on a plane overnight and he goes and visits with those in Saudi Arabia, with a delegation in Saudi Arabia. He had Mike Pompeo accompanying him, which means we're talking about a major representative of the United States of America. This happened a few weeks ago, if you remember. But here's the thing that a lot of people didn't talk about. And this was part of the news story at the time. The head, we're talking about the leader of Mossad, was also with Netanyahu at that time. So I'm beginning to think that there are some very serious diplomatic talks that are going on right now with Saudi Arabia, and I'm willing to bet you that this was a reciprocation of what had happened initially, right? Netanyahu takes the first step into going into their sovereign territory. Now I'm willing to bet that they went into the sovereign territory of Israel, probably accompanied by, and no one is going to say this to us, but probably accompanied by MBS. I would not be surprised if that was the case. It's just what my initial gut is. I could be wrong, but I think it's highly likely that I'm right.
Man, we live in exciting days. Hey, listen, we got to wrap up, but I just help us all be focused. Christmas is coming. We're coming up rapidly to the end of 2020. What do you foresee in 2021?
Ooh.
Okay, maybe we should save that for next time.
We'll save it for next time. I just got to say that everybody who's really excited to get rid of 2020, I don't know if I'd be excited to get rid of 2020 because 2021, I don't know.
Look out, baby. I say you better get another seatbelt.
I think probably another 4 seatbelts and a rolling cage.
I tell you what, let's do this on the next program. That's what we'll talk about. What's coming in what we think is coming in 2021. That will be exciting.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, bro.
All right. God bless you, bro.
God bless you. Bye.
Bye.